Hello, today we're going to be talking about the Elian Monastery. The monastery of Elian was a Syriac Catholic monastery located near the town of Al-Quraytain in central Syria. Al-Quraytain is along a trade route between the two major cities, Palmyra and Damascus, as you can see from the map. The monastery has a tomb from the 5th century. The story goes that sometime around the 5th to 6th century, a pious Christian man from eastern Mesopotamia named Julian undertook a pilgrimage to Jerusalem with his disciples. On the way back, he felt like he was going to die on the journey, so he asked his disciples to tie his body to an ox cart, and wherever the ox stopped was where they should bury him. The ox stopped near a small town in the desert between Damascus and Palmyra called Al-Quraytain, as already mentioned. Julian's tomb was built there, and eventually a monastery rose up around it. The monastery and the shrine within/around it date from at least the 6th century. It was constructed of stone decorated with circular patterns. The builder is unknown, as is the time when the monastery was first active. Since then, the shrine has become a major pilgrimage site for both Christians, Muslims, and even the occasional Jew. The walls feature graffiti left behind by worshippers from different faiths. The reason for this is that the local Muslim population believes that Julian was a spiritual Sufi leader. They called him Sheikh Ahmed Gori, Gori meaning priest, and he was also believed to be a Christian saint. The population of Al-Quraytain is approximately 1/5 Christian and 4/5 Muslim. The two religions have existed in unusual harmony until the present. This sensibility is demonstrated by an inscription above the monastery door that says, "The site was under the protection of the local leader at the time, and all pilgrims were welcome and not to be harassed." Local legend says that this harmony exists because when Islam was introduced, there were two tribes living in the area. One of the tribes decided to try the new religion, while the other stayed Christian, with the agreement that whichever tribe eventually belonged to the more prevalent religion would protect their brothers in the minority. This is another picture of the monastery. Around Al-Quraytain, September 9th was celebrated as the Festival of Elian by thousands of Christians and Muslims from around the Syrian desert. Around 2001, Father Jacques Morab was appointed to the old monastery in order to excavate and breathe new life into the old monastery. Until the Syrian civil war, the area was able to isolate itself from outside influences, which allowed it to preserve much of its identity, perhaps because of the desert that surrounded it. Beginning around 2011, it provided refuge to hundreds of Syrians fleeing the war. The Elian Monastery is also sometimes known as the Sanctuary of Elian and hailed as a model of hospitality due to the peace with which large populations of Muslims and Christians live side by side. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, otherwise known as ISIL and IS, was created by Abu Musab al-Zakari in 1999 from the remnants of al-Qaeda in Iraq. One of the most well-known and powerful terrorist groups today, around 2015 it held about a third of Syria and 40% of Iraq. The core beliefs of the group are mainly based on the writings of Sayyid Qutb, an Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood theoretician. Since their inception, ISIS has aimed to solidify and expand its control of territory once ruled by early Muslim caliphs. They intend to govern this territory according to a strict interpretation of Sharia law. ISIS wants their brand of Islam to become the only faith, which they believe entitles them to fight all unbelievers and attack all non-Muslim countries. ISIS also regards Christians as infidels.
During U.S. occupation in Iraq, ISIS faded into the background, but around 2011 it reemerged, taking advantage of the political instability preceding the Syrian civil war. Beginning in 2014, the U.S. launched Operation Inherent Resolve, which was a series of airstrikes designed to combat ISIS's power in Iraq and Syria, but the group was still able to retain control of its Syrian territory. In 2015, ISIS, or by that point IS, expanded its operations to the global scale. Members began to carry out attacks outside of Syria and Iraq, the caliphate under ISIS control. The US and France were some of the more well-known ISIS outposts. Notable instances from the year include when Egyptian members bombed a Russian plane and a set of coordinated Paris attacks that took place on November 13th and killed 130 people. 2015 was when the Elian Monastery was attacked and demolished. The operation began in May 2015 when ISIS captured Christian pastor Father Jacques or Yacoub Morad. Believed dead at first, it was later revealed that the pastor was held captive in a bathroom in an ISIS stronghold in Raqqa, along with 100 other people. On August 11, 2015, ISIS forces completely demolished the ancient monastery with bulldozers and other tools of destruction. In total, 230 people, mostly Christians, were kidnapped as a result of the attack. ISIS claimed they destroyed the site because they believed God wasn't worshipped there. But the real reason was probably due to the harmony in which Islam and Christianity existed around the site. Talking about the series of 2015 historical site attacks to which the Mar-a-Lago destruction belonged, ISIS-allied fanatics said, God has honored us in the Islamic State to remove all of these idols and statues worshipped instead of Allah in the past days. Whenever we seize a piece of land, we will remove signs of idolatry and spread monotheism. One member, however, just said that ISIS had destroyed the monastery simply because it was being worshipped. Even though Muslims worshipped at Mar-a-Lago Monastery, ISIS considered the philosophy surrounding it to be against their beliefs. Prior to the attack, not many efforts were made to prevent that possibility, so the people of Al-Qaryatan were ill-prepared for such an event. Al-Qaryatan remained under ISIS control for 8 months before being liberated by Syrian forces. In 2022, reinstated Father Jacques launched a plan to rebuild the monastery in collaboration with the Syrian Catholic community and the monks of local monastery Deir Mar Musa. Vineyards and olive groves surrounding the site will be replanted, and select walls and doors of the monastery will be reconstructed. In early 2022, only 26 Christians were living in the area, greatly reduced from the 1/5 of the population they had been. Father Jacques, however, hopes to encourage previous residents to return to the area so that the unique culture of Al-Qaryatan can continue. Father Jacques is optimistic for the future of Mar-a-Lago, saying, "We know that the old sanctuary was razed to the ground, that the archaeological site was devastated, while the new church and the monastery were set on fire and partly bombed. But when we return to Mar-a-Lago, we will put the relics of the saint back in their place. The life of grace will blossom again around the memory of the saints, and it will be a great sign of blessing for our whole church." Even though ISIS no longer has a base in Syria and Iraq, however, it still has plenty of members both there and overseas, and is still a formidable threat. ISIS's last major attack is believed to be from late October 2022, when 15 were killed and 40 were injured by an attack at an Iranian shrine. The destruction of the Mar-a-Lago monastery was truly a tragedy, as much for the cultural loss as for the people who were affected by the attack. As a former Al-Qaryatan resident states, "My heart keeps crying Mar-a-Lago."